Let's start with a truth that makes most people uncomfortable. The best pitches don't rely on logic, charisma, or even a perfect product. They rely on something far more primal: fear. Not fear of failure, but fear of missing out. That gnawing anxiety that if they don't say yes right now, they'll kick themselves later. Think about the last time you bought something because it was labeled limited quantity or ending soon. Your brain didn't calculate ROI. It panicked at the idea of losing access. That's FOMO, fear of missing out, and it's the secret weapon of every legendary pitch. Let's rewind to 2012, when a little-known startup called Oculus VR pitched its virtual reality headset to investors. On paper, it was a niche gadget with a buggy prototype. But the founders didn't lead with specs. They told a story. Imagine a world where you're not just playing games, you're inside them. Where VR isn't sci-fi, but your living room. And imagine if you passed on investing in the next PC revolution. Suddenly, the pitch wasn't about a headset. It was about avoiding the agony of missing the future. They raised $2.4 million, and Facebook bought them for $3 billion 2 years later. That's FOMO at its finest. Why does this work? Because humans are wired to dread loss twice as much as we crave gain. A 2018 Harvard study found that pitches triggering FOMO saw 62% higher conversion rates because audiences shifted from "is this good?" to "what if someone else gets this first?" But here's the catch. FOMO isn't manipulation, it's strategic urgency. It's about highlighting what's uniquely at stake. For investors, it's losing market share. For philanthropists, it's delaying a cure. For your boss, it's letting competitors steal your thunder. The key is to plant a seed. My idea isn't just valuable, it's time-sensitive. And if you blink, you'll wish you hadn't. Now, imagine you're selling a plant-based cheese brand. A weak pitch says, "Our product is tasty and healthy." A FOMO-infused pitch says, "Plant-based cheese sales are growing 23% annually, and shelf space is vanishing." Last month, Whole Foods rejected a competitor because they hesitated too long. This isn't just about health, it's about being the first to own this white space. Suddenly, your audience isn't evaluating your product, they're calculating the cost of inaction. FOMO isn't a gimmick, it's psychology. It's turning interesting into "I need to act now." But here's the next secret: to make FOMO work, you must wrap it in a story. Because urgency without emotion is just a deadline. Storytelling isn't a buzzword, it's the scaffolding of human connection. When we hear data alone, our brains process it like a spreadsheet. But when we hear a story, our neurons fire like fireworks. That's why the most memorable pitches don't feel like presentations. They feel like movies. Think of TED Talks that made you cry, or that startup founder who had the room hanging on every word. They didn't win with bullet points. They won by making their audience feel something. Let's dissect a classic example: Airbnb's 2008 pitch to Y Combinator. At the time, their idea, renting air mattresses in strangers' homes, sounded absurd. But their pitch wasn't a deck of market analysis. It was a story about two broke designers who couldn't pay rent, realized they had empty space, and created a service that let others live like a local. They didn't just explain their product. They invited listeners into their struggle, their epiphany, and their vision. The result? They got funded, and the rest is history. Why does this matter? Because stories bypass logic and tap into identity. When you hear a relatable struggle, you think, "That could have been me." When you hear a turning point, you lean in. When you hear a resolution, you think, I want to be part of that. That's the power of narrative. It turns passive listeners into active participants. So how do you craft a pitch that sticks? Start with a character, a challenge, and a transformation. Avoid abstract concepts like disrupting industries. Instead, paint a scene. Picture this, it's midnight. You're stuck at an airport after a canceled flight. Hotels are full, prices are inflated, and you're exhausted. Now imagine someone nearby has a spare couch, and suddenly you're not stranded. That's the world we're building. This isn't about being theatrical, it's about being human. The best pitches don't sell ideas. They sell the feeling of what those ideas could do. And once you've hooked someone emotionally, you've won half the battle. So next time you're staring at a blank slide deck, ask yourself, am I sharing data or inviting someone into a story they'll regret missing? If you found these strategies powerful, share this video with someone who's about to pitch their big idea. Because the world needs more storytellers and fewer snooze-worthy presentations.